Give it up for Steve! No! Yeah!
Yes, amen, amen. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Yes, yes.
So, for those who may not know, tonight's our 13th anniversary of doing this. Arnie mentioned that a little bit ago, and the poem he read just has always meant a lot to me, because he wrote it for an event following the first time we lost our home in a fire. And so that was just something really special. Lots of things are hard these days, actually for everybody, right? Like nobody's exempt, nobody gets out of it scot-free, nobody has an easy time of it. It's just all hard these days in so many ways. And for me, whenever things get hard, there's really only one thing that enables me to continue on or to take a next step, and it's the people that have come into my life over the last 14 years here in Toledo. While I have been on Toledo as an anvil, and I have been shaped much being on that anvil, the way that's happened is through just the amazing people that I know that have gotten connected through these community dinners over the years, and through other things we've been able to be part of. And so there's one poem that I've written. I really just started writing poetry because I met a bunch of poets that I fell in love with, and I wanted to talk to them, so I started writing poetry. And so there's this one poem that I wrote that is always my reminder. It's my best reminder, other than a face-to-face encounter with somebody. This is called Haunted Tears, and it's inspired actually by, the central idea is inspired by The Book Thief and by my friend Sarah. It's embarrassing, really. My kids turned to wait for it. Wait for it? Breathlessly waiting for my eyes to softly brim over, or worse, violently flood. Whether at pain or triumph, splendor or travesty, my eyes, my emotions, my heaving heart, more captivating than the story or its images on the LED screen. What sappy sentimentality! You'd think a grown man whose beard is snowier white than an animated heroine could control his emotions by now. For God's sake, have a little dignity, man. But it's the faces, it's the characters, it's their stories. They haunt me. It's the angst-ridden poet and the grief that accompanies beautiful words of vulnerability and hope against hope, or angry words, shaking a fist at injustice, falling on unhearing ears. And it's the picking up of that pen that saves her life again and yet again. It's the enigmatic skeptic and the honestly won cynicism that clouds his world like an impending all-day soaker of disappointment and unveiled hypocrisy. And it's the hope that cracks its way somehow through his impenetrable granite surface. It's the idiosyncratic genius and the ostracism of self, not to mention those who do not understand and those who fear, and all ironically together in unacknowledged pain, suffering silently and alone. And it's the brilliance of his ideas that break through obscurity into light. It's the hidden-faced one and the arm wrestling over who is most uncomfortable, the one possessing or the one trying to divest, the one hoping or the one hoping not to find. And it's the discovery of the first vestiges of truly seeing and being seen. It's the grief-stricken loser of lover or dream, picking herself up off the mat, only to be body-slammed once more and again, and the pitying spectators sipping on their sympathy. And it's the final transcendent triumph of the loser in a company of them. It's the young realist, really undercover idealist, whose ideas have both the insight and power to change the world, but who's told it's not yet your turn, so get back in line. and it's her refusal to settle for a despotic and impotent status quo. It's the starving artist whose vision and creativity stem from an invisible, unending source, uncomprehended by those whose prescription has expired and whose ear cannot hear such visceral sound. And it's his devastating choice to paint it, play it still from his deepness. It's the man with no roof, whose stereotype-written story is authored by a community just fine with it all, by a culture gone wild with pragmatism and struck blind with self-interested analysis. And it's the dismantling of collected assumptions against all odds. It's the church-ridden follower in the guilty pleasures of dogmatic certainty and sanctioned outsider relegation to hopelessness and despair, whose gut tells him he has missed something. And it's the courage found to more closely follow the one who always hopes. It's the alienated world and its torment, torn apart by isolation and compartmentalization, fragmented by war and fraudulent efforts at peace, heaving its heavy heart in grief-stricken agony. And it's the hope that reconciliation and redemption are palpably real. Oh, how often and how desperately I want to quit, to run, to forget that I care. But the stories, the characters, the faces, they haunt me. So it's the self-tormented pastor and the fatigue that accompanies grieving loss and all the lost grieving, whose lofty aspiration is yet so distant that it defies the most stubborn faith and falls to disheartened earth. And it's the hoping against fleeting hope that the final story will transcend his haunted tears.
Yeah!